The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of my penthouse office, sending crystal fragments across the room like tiny diamonds. 5 years ago, I was cleaning coffee spills off conference tables while my ideas were dismissed as cute little hobbies. Today, I was about to destroy the man who tried to destroy me. My name is Isabella Morgan, and this is the story of how I turned humiliation into a billion-dollar empire. It started on a Tuesday morning in March 2019. I was 28 years old, working as a junior marketing coordinator at Pinnacle Financial Solutions, a mid-sized investment firm in downtown Chicago. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I clutched my laptop bag, heart pounding with nervous excitement. Today was the day I would finally present my passion project to the executive team. For months, I had been developing an idea for a financial wellness app called MoneyMind during my lunch breaks and weekends, and the concept was simple yet revolutionary. Combine behavioral psychology with artificial intelligence to help people make better financial decisions. Unlike the dry, intimidating financial apps already on the market, MoneyMind would gamify saving and investing, making financial literacy accessible to everyone, especially young adults who felt overwhelmed by traditional financial advice. I had spent countless hours researching user experience design, studying behavioral economics, and even learning basic coding to create a working prototype. The app featured personalized avatars, achievement badges, and social challenges that made saving money feel like playing a game. Users could set goals, track progress, and receive AI-powered insights about their spending patterns, all wrapped in an interface that felt more like Instagram than a banking app. The conference room at Pinnacle was intimidating, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River and a mahogany table that seemed to stretch for miles. I had requested 15 minutes to present my idea, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the company would consider developing it as a side project or even spinning it off as a separate venture. The executives filed in, one by one. There was Margaret Thompson, the chief marketing officer, who had always been supportive of my work. James Burke, the chief technology officer, seemed interested in innovative ideas. And then there was him, Derek Nathaniel Brooks, the chief operating officer and the man who would become my nemesis. Derek was everything I wasn't: privileged, connected, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. At 35, he had climbed the corporate ladder through a combination of family connections and ruthless ambition. His father was a prominent venture capitalist, and Derek had never known what it felt like to have an idea dismissed simply because of who you were, rather than what you had to offer. I began my presentation with confidence, explaining the market opportunity for financial wellness apps and demonstrating MoneyMind's unique features. The prototype worked flawlessly, and I could see genuine interest in Margaret's eyes as she watched the demo. The financial wellness market is projected to reach $15 billion by 2025, I explained, clicking through my carefully prepared slides. But most current solutions are either too complex for average users or too simplistic to create lasting behavioral change. MoneyMind bridges that gap by using proven psychological principles to make financial wellness engaging and sustainable. I showed them user testimonials from my beta testing phase, engagement metrics that exceeded industry standards, and a detailed business plan that outlined revenue projections and growth strategies. Everything was going perfectly until Derek leaned back in his chair and let out a condescending chuckle. "Isabella," he said, my name dripping with patronizing sweetness. "This is adorable, really. But let's be realistic here. You're talking about turning serious financial planning into some kind of video game for millennials who can't be bothered to read a real investment guide." My cheeks burned, but I maintained my composure. "Actually, Derek, the gamification elements are based on extensive research in behavioral psychology. Studies show that traditional financial education fails because it doesn't address the emotional and psychological barriers that prevent people from making good financial decisions. MoneyMind uses positive reinforcement and social accountability to create lasting behavior change." Derek's smile was razor-sharp. "Listen, sweetheart, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this company deals with serious money and serious investors. We're not going to risk our reputation on some cutesy app that treats investing like Pokemon Go. Maybe you should focus on your actual job instead of these little hobby projects. The room fell silent. I felt the blood drain from my face as Derek's words hit me like a physical blow. Hobby projects. The dismissal was complete and devastating. Margaret cleared her throat uncomfortably. Isabella, perhaps we could discuss this further in a smaller setting. No need, Derek interrupted, already reaching for his phone. I think we've seen enough. Isabella, why don't you head back to your desk? I'm sure there are some marketing reports that need your attention. I packed up my laptop with trembling hands, my vision blurred by tears of humiliation and rage. As I walked toward the door, Derek called out one final insult that would fuel my determination for years to come. Oh, and Isabella, next time you want to play entrepreneur, maybe start with a lemonade stand. It's more your speed. The laughter that followed me out of that conference room was the sound of my world crashing down, but it was also the moment my real journey began. I spent the rest of that day in a daze, mechanically completing my assigned tasks while my mind raced with anger and determination. That evening, I sat in my cramped studio apartment, staring at my MoneyMind prototype on my laptop screen. Derek's words echoed in my head. Hobby projects. Cutesy app. More your speed. I made a decision that would change everything. If Pinnacle Financial Solutions wouldn't take me seriously, I would prove them wrong on my own terms. The next morning, I submitted my 2 weeks' notice. Margaret was shocked. Isabella, you don't have to do this. Derek was out of line yesterday, and I plan to speak with him about his conduct. It's not just about Derek, I replied, though we both knew it partially was. I believe in MoneyMind, and I'm going to make it succeed with or without Pinnacle's support. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Derek made sure to assign me the most mundane tasks possible, clearly enjoying his power over me. He would walk by my desk with a smug grin, sometimes making comments about failed entrepreneurs just loud enough for me to hear. But every insult only strengthened my resolve. I used my lunch breaks to meet with potential investors, though most doors remained closed to a 28-year-old woman with no track record and limited connections. I applied to startup accelerators, reached out to angel investors, and even considered crowdfunding. The responses were polite but consistent. Interesting concept, but we're looking for more experienced founders. My savings account dwindled rapidly. I'd managed to save about $40,000 during my time at Pinnacle, which seemed like a fortune when I was planning a vacation but felt pathetically small when trying to launch a tech startup. I moved to an even smaller apartment, survived on ramen noodles and coffee, and spent every waking moment working on MoneyMind. The breakthrough came 6 months later, in an unexpected place, a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. I was working on user interface designs when I overheard 2 women at the next table discussing their financial struggles. One was a recent college graduate drowning in student loan debt, while the other was a single mother trying to save for her daughter's education while managing credit card payments. They talked about feeling overwhelmed by financial advice that seemed designed for people with 6-figure incomes and trust funds. I wish someone would just tell me where to start, the graduate said. All these investment apps want me to put in thousands of dollars I don't have. And the budgeting apps make me feel guilty for buying coffee. It was exactly the problem MoneyMind was designed to solve, but hearing it articulated so perfectly gave me a new perspective on my marketing strategy. I walked over to their table and introduced myself. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. I'm developing an app that might help with exactly what you're describing. Would you mind if I showed you a quick demo? Both women were intrigued, and as I walked them through MoneyMind's features, I watched their faces light up with recognition and excitement. The app's gamification elements made financial planning feel achievable rather than overwhelming. And the AI-powered insights provided personalized advice that felt relevant to their specific situations. This is incredible, the single mother said. When will it be available? I'm still looking for funding to complete development, I admitted, but I'm hoping to launch within the next year. The graduate pulled out her phone. Can I get your contact information? I have a friend who works at a venture capital firm. She's always looking for female-founded startups to support. That friend turned out to be Amanda Foster, a partner at Riverside Ventures who specialized in fintech investments. Amanda was everything Derek wasn't: supportive, insightful, and genuinely interested in solving real problems. She immediately understood MoneyMind's potential and agreed to set up a meeting with her investment committee. The presentation at Riverside Ventures was completely different from my experience at Pinnacle. The conference room was smaller but more welcoming, with exposed brick walls and modern furniture that felt more like a collaborative workspace than a corporate boardroom. Amanda introduced me to her colleagues with genuine enthusiasm, and I could feel their attention and respect as I walked through my presentation. The financial wellness market is underserved, particularly for younger demographics. I explained, my confidence growing with each slide. MoneyMind addresses this gap by combining proven behavioral psychology techniques with cutting-edge AI technology to create sustainable financial habits. The questions that followed were challenging but constructive. They wanted to understand my user acquisition strategy, my competitive advantages, and my long-term vision for the company. Unlike Derek's dismissive attitude, these investors were genuinely interested in helping me succeed. 3 weeks later, Amanda called with news that would change my life. Riverside Ventures was prepared to offer me a $2 million Series A investment in exchange for 20% equity in MoneyMind Inc. I accepted immediately. The next 18 months were a whirlwind of product development, team building, and strategic planning. I hired a world-class development team, brought on experienced marketing professionals, and worked with user experience designers to refine MoneyMind's interface. The app evolved from my solo passion project into a sophisticated platform that could compete with established financial services companies. We beta tested with over 10,000 users, iterating based on their feedback and continuously improving the app's features. The gamification elements were refined to be more meaningful and less gimmicky, while the AI-powered insights became increasingly sophisticated and personalized. User engagement metrics exceeded our most optimistic projections, and word-of-mouth marketing drove organic growth that impressed even our investors. MoneyMind officially launched in January 2021, just as the pandemic had made financial wellness more important than ever. People were stuck at home, worried about their financial futures, and looking for tools that could help them take control of their money. MoneyMind was perfectly positioned to meet this demand. The response was immediate and overwhelming. We gained 50,000 users in our first month, a number that doubled every month for the rest of the year. The app's social features allowed users to form support groups and share their financial victories, creating a community that went far beyond simple budgeting tools. Major media outlets began covering MoneyMind's success story. Forbes featured me on their 30 Under 30 list, calling MoneyMind the future of financial wellness. TechCrunch wrote about our innovative use of AI in personal finance, while the Wall Street Journal explored how gamification was transforming the way people thought about money. But the real validation came from our users. The App Store reviews were filled with stories of people who had paid off debt, started investing for the first time, or finally felt confident about their financial decisions. Teachers wrote about using MoneyMind to educate their students about financial literacy. Parents described how the app had helped them save for their children's education. Young professionals shared their success stories about building emergency funds and starting retirement accounts. By the end of 2021, MoneyMind had 2 million active users and was generating $30 million in annual revenue. We had expanded beyond the original app to include educational content, investment services, and partnership programs with major financial institutions. The company was valued at $500 million, making me one of the youngest female founders to achieve unicorn status. But I wasn't done yet. Derek Brooks and Pinnacle Financial Solutions were still out there. And I hadn't forgotten the humiliation I'd experienced in that conference room. The opportunity for revenge came in early 2022, when I learned that Pinnacle was struggling to compete with more innovative fintech companies. Their traditional approach to financial services was losing market share to companies that offered more user-friendly, technology-driven solutions. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were facing exactly the disruption that MoneyMind had been designed to capitalize on. I began monitoring Pinnacle's financial performance and strategic initiatives. Their stock price had declined by 40% over the past year, and industry analysts were questioning their ability to adapt to changing market conditions. Derek had been promoted to Chief Executive Officer, but his leadership was already being criticized for its lack of innovation and failure to embrace digital transformation. The perfect moment came when I learned that Pinnacle was seeking partnerships with fintech companies to modernize their service offerings. They had reached out to several companies in our space, including some of our competitors, in hopes of licensing technology or forming strategic alliances. I decided to make them an offer they couldn't refuse and couldn't afford to accept. Through our legal team, I submitted a formal proposal to acquire Pinnacle Financial Solutions for $3 billion. The offer was structured to highlight MoneyMind's dominance in the market and Pinnacle's desperate need for innovation. We proposed integrating their traditional financial services with MoneyMind's technology platform, creating a comprehensive financial wellness ecosystem that would serve customers across all demographics and income levels. The proposal was professionally written and financially sound, but it included several subtle elements designed to maximize Derek's humiliation. The executive summary mentioned how MoneyMind had grown from a passion project into a market-leading platform. And the strategic rationale section explained how traditional financial services companies needed to embrace gamification and user-centric design to remain competitive. Most importantly, the proposal specified that I would serve as CEO of the combined company, with Derek reporting to me as Chief Operating Officer, a complete reversal of our previous power dynamic. The media attention was immediate and intense. Business publications covered the acquisition attempt as a David versus Goliath story, with headlines like, "Former employee attempts hostile takeover of company that rejected her idea," and "MoneyMind founder seeks revenge against former employer." The coverage was exactly what I had hoped for. Interview requests poured in from major news outlets, and I carefully crafted my narrative to emphasize themes of perseverance, innovation, and the importance of supporting diverse entrepreneurs. I never mentioned Derek by name, but I made sure to highlight how my hobby project had become a legitimate threat to established financial services companies. Derek's response was predictably defensive. In a hastily arranged press conference, he dismissed MoneyMind as a fad and claimed that Pinnacle's traditional approach to financial services was more sustainable than gimmicky apps that treat serious money like a game. His words were almost identical to what he had said in that conference room 3 years earlier. But now the context was completely different. Derek was no longer the powerful executive dismissing a junior employee's idea. He was a struggling CEO trying to defend his company against a billion-dollar acquisition threat. The press conference backfired spectacularly. Derek came across as out of touch and arrogant, particularly when he suggested that MoneyMind's success was due to market timing rather than genuine innovation. Social media users quickly identified the irony of his comments, and the Marge hobby project began trending on Twitter as people shared their own stories of having ideas dismissed by condescending executives. The situation became even more embarrassing for Derek when former Pinnacle employees began speaking to the media about the culture of dismissiveness and lack of innovation at the company. Margaret Thompson, who had left Pinnacle several months earlier, gave an interview to Fortune magazine in which she described the day I'd presented MoneyMind to the executive team. Isabella's presentation was brilliant, Margaret said. She had identified a real market opportunity and developed a sophisticated solution. But instead of recognizing her talent and supporting her vision, leadership chose to dismiss her ideas as frivolous. It was a perfect example of how traditional companies fail to innovate. The article went on to describe how several other promising ideas had been rejected by Pinnacle's leadership team, contributing to the company's current struggles. Derek's management style was characterized as authoritarian and closed to outside perspectives, exactly the opposite of what was needed in a rapidly changing industry. While the media attention was satisfying, I knew that the real victory would come from MoneyMind's continued success. The acquisition proposal had served its purpose as a public relations coup, but I had never intended to actually buy Pinnacle. The company's culture and leadership were fundamentally incompatible with MoneyMind's values. and integrating their operations would have been a distraction from our core mission. Instead, I focused on accelerating MoneyMind's growth and expanding our market dominance. We launched new features that addressed retirement planning, tax optimization, and small business finances. Partnership agreements with major employers allowed us to offer MoneyMind as an employee benefit, dramatically expanding our user base. International expansion brought our platform to users in Europe and Asia, where demand for financial wellness tools was growing rapidly. By the end of 2022, MoneyMind had 15 million active users and was generating over $200 million in annual revenue. The company's valuation had increased to $3 billion, making my personal net worth approximately $800 million. We had become the undisputed leader in the financial wellness space, with competitors struggling to match our combination of user engagement, technological sophistication, and market reach. Derek's situation, meanwhile, had deteriorated significantly. Pinnacle's stock price continued to decline, and several major investors had called for changes in leadership. The company had attempted to develop their own financial wellness app, but the project had been plagued by delays, budget overruns, and user interface problems. Their Pinnacle Life app received terrible reviews and was quickly withdrawn from the market. The final blow came in March 2023, when Pinnacle's board of directors announced that Derek would be stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. The press release cited strategic differences and the need for fresh leadership to guide the company through digital transformation. Derek's departure was covered extensively in the business media, with many articles connecting his downfall to his failure to recognize MoneyMind's potential years earlier. A particularly detailed piece in Harvard Business Review used Pinnacle's decline as a case study in how traditional companies could miss disruptive opportunities by dismissing innovative ideas from unexpected sources. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction reading those articles, but my revenge wasn't complete yet. I wanted Derek to understand, personally and directly, how completely our positions had reversed. The opportunity came when Derek reached out to me through a mutual business contact, requesting a private meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. He claimed to have learned from his mistakes and wanted to explore ways that his experience in traditional finance could complement MoneyMind's technological capabilities. I agreed to meet him at my penthouse office, the same space where I had celebrated MoneyMind's first billion-dollar valuation. The symbolism was intentional. I wanted Derek to see exactly how far I had come since that humiliating day in Pinnacle's conference room. Derek arrived exactly on time, dressed in an expensive suit that couldn't hide the stress and defeat in his eyes. He was still handsome and well-groomed, but there was something diminished about his presence. The arrogance and condescension that had once defined him had been replaced by a desperate hunger for relevance. "Isabella," he said, extending his hand with a forced smile. "Congratulations on everything you've accomplished. MoneyMind is truly impressive." I shook his hand briefly, noting how his grip lacked the confidence it had once possessed. "Thank you, Derek. Please, have a seat." We sat across from each other at my conference table, the Chicago skyline stretching out behind me through floor-to-ceiling windows. Derek's eyes took in the luxurious office, the awards and recognition displayed on my walls, and the obvious markers of success that surrounded us. "I'll get straight to the point," Derek said, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "I know our history is complicated, but I believe there might be opportunities for us to work together. My experience in traditional finance could help MoneyMind expand into institutional services, and—" "Derek," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "Do you remember what you said to me in that conference room 4 years ago?" He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Isabella, I know I could have handled that situation better. I was under a lot of pressure, and I may have been too quick to dismiss your ideas. But that's exactly why I think we could. You called MoneyMind a cutesy app and suggested I start with a lemonade stand," I continued, my tone never wavering. "You dismissed my research, mocked my vision, and humiliated me in front of the entire executive team." Derek's face flushed with embarrassment. "I was wrong. I can see that now. MoneyMind has exceeded everyone's expectations. and I should have recognized your talent from the beginning. You're right, I said, leaning back in my chair. You should have, but you didn't. And that decision has consequences. I reached for a folder on my desk and slid it across the table to Derek. These are the financial projections for MoneyMind's next phase of growth. We're expanding into cryptocurrency trading, international markets, and corporate financial services. Our revenue is projected to reach $1 billion within the next 18 months. Derek opened the folder and scanned the documents, his expression growing more stunned with each page. This is incredible, Isabella. The scale of what you've built is beyond anything I imagined. Now look at this, I said, sliding another folder across the table. These are Pinnacle's financial statements for the past 3 years. Revenue declining, market share eroding, stock price in free fall. The company is worth less today than it was when I left. Derek closed the folder without looking at the contents. He already knew what they contained. I want you to understand something, I continued, my voice gaining intensity. Every decision has consequences. When you dismissed my ideas, you weren't just insulting me, you were revealing the kind of leader you were, closed-minded, arrogant, and incapable of recognizing innovation when it was presented to you. Isabella, I know I made mistakes. You made a choice, I corrected. You chose to see me as a threat to your authority rather than an asset to your organization. You chose to prioritize your ego over your company's future. And now you're living with the consequences of those choices. Derek sat in silence, his hands folded in his lap like a chastened child. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm not going to work with you, collaborate with you, or provide you with any opportunities to rehabilitate your career. You had your chance to be part of something innovative and transformative, and you threw it away because you couldn't handle the possibility that a 28-year-old woman might have a better idea than you. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where I had built my empire. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for what you did to me in that conference room. Your dismissal and humiliation gave me the motivation I needed to prove you wrong. Every insult you threw at me became fuel for my determination. Every moment of doubt you created became a reason to work harder. Derek finally found his voice. What do you want from me, Isabella? I turned back to face him, my expression calm and resolved. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that the cutesy app you mocked is now worth $3 billion. I want you to remember that the hobby project you dismissed has helped millions of people improve their financial lives. And I want you to remember that the woman you told to start a lemonade stand is now one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. Derek stood up slowly, his shoulders sagging with defeat. I suppose there's nothing more to say. Actually, there is one more thing, I said, walking back to my desk. I've been thinking about your suggestion that I start with a lemonade stand. It was meant as an insult, but it actually gave me an idea. I pulled out a final document and handed it to Derek. MoneyMind is launching a financial literacy program for children called Lemonade Stand Economics. It teaches kids about entrepreneurship, budgeting, and basic business principles through interactive games and activities. We're partnering with schools across the country to make financial education accessible to the next generation. Derek looked at the document, his expression unreadable. I wanted to thank you for the inspiration, I continued. The program is expected to reach over 1 million students in its first year. We're calling it our most important initiative because we believe that financial literacy should start early, before children learn to be intimidated by money or to dismiss ideas that challenge conventional thinking. Derek handed the document back to me without a word. There's one more thing I want you to know, I said as he prepared to leave. I don't hate you anymore. Hate requires energy, and I've put all my energy into building something meaningful. But I will never forget what you taught me about the importance of believing in yourself, even when others don't believe in you. Derek nodded silently and walked toward the door. As he reached for the handle, he paused and turned back to me. For what it's worth, Isabella, I am genuinely sorry for how I treated you. You deserved better, and I hope you can find it in yourself to forgive me someday. I looked at him for a long moment, seeing not the arrogant executive who had once humiliated me, but a broken man who had finally understood the cost of his choices. "I forgive you, Derek," I said quietly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean there aren't consequences. You chose to be the kind of leader who crushed dreams instead of nurturing them. That's a legacy you'll have to live with." Derek left my office without another word, and I never saw him again. As I watched him disappear into the elevator, I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't expected. The revenge I had planned for so long wasn't about destroying Derek or making him suffer. It was about proving that his assessment of me had been completely wrong. I had taken his mockery and turned it into motivation, his insults into inspiration, his dismissal into determination. The real victory wasn't Derek's downfall. It was MoneyMind's success and the impact we were having on people's lives. Every user who paid off debt, started investing, or gained confidence in their financial decisions was a testament to the power of innovation and perseverance. 6 months later, MoneyMind went public in one of the most successful IPOs in fintech history. The stock price opened at $60 per share and closed the first day at $95, valuing the company at $8 billion. My personal net worth exceeded $2 billion, making me one of the youngest female billionaires in the world. The IPO ceremony was held at the New York Stock Exchange, with hundreds of MoneyMind employees, investors, and supporters in attendance. As I rang the opening bell, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment, from a cramped conference room where my dreams were dismissed to the most prestigious trading floor in the world. During my speech to the crowd, I talked about the importance of supporting innovation regardless of where it comes from, and the danger of letting preconceptions blind us to transformative opportunities. I didn't mention Derek by name, but anyone who knew the story understood the message. "Sometimes our greatest failures become our greatest motivations," I said, my voice carrying across the trading floor. The word no doesn't mean an idea is wrong. It just means you need to find the right people to say yes. The applause was thunderous, but the moment that meant the most to me came afterward, when a young woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Ms. Morgan," she said, "I'm a computer science student at Northwestern, and I've been working on an idea for a sustainable energy app. I've been afraid to share it because I'm worried people won't take me seriously. But hearing your story gives me hope that maybe I can make a difference too." I looked at this young woman, seeing myself 5 years earlier, and felt a surge of pride and responsibility. "What's your name?" "Amy Chen," she replied. "Amy, I want you to remember something. Your ideas have value, regardless of what anyone else thinks. If you believe in your vision, fight for it. Don't let anyone convince you that your dreams are too small or too ambitious. The world needs more people who are willing to challenge the status quo." I handed her my business card. "Send me your proposal. If it's as good as you think it is, MoneyMind Ventures might be interested in funding it." Amy's eyes widened with excitement and disbelief. "Really? You would consider investing in a college student's idea?" "Amy, 5 years ago, I was a junior marketing coordinator with a passion project and a belief in my vision. Look where that led me. Never underestimate the power of a good idea and the determination to make it real." As Amy walked away, clutching my business card like a precious treasure, I realized that this was the true meaning of my success. It wasn't about revenge or proving Derek wrong. It was about creating opportunities for the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs. MoneyMind had become more than a financial app. It was a symbol of what was possible when people refused to accept limitations placed on them by others. Every day, we received messages from users whose lives had been transformed by our platform, and from entrepreneurs who had been inspired by our story to pursue their own dreams. The company continued to grow and evolve, expanding into new markets and developing innovative solutions for financial challenges around the world. We launched MoneyMind Business to help small business owners manage their finances, MoneyMind Retirement to assist older adults with financial planning, and MoneyMind Global to serve users in developing countries who had limited access to traditional banking services. But perhaps the most meaningful project was MoneyMind Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing financial education and resources to underserved communities. The foundation offered free financial literacy courses, supported entrepreneurship programs in low-income areas, and provided scholarships for students studying business and technology. Through the foundation, I had the opportunity to meet countless young people who reminded me of myself, passionate, determined, and full of ideas that could change the world. Many of them had been told that their dreams were unrealistic or that they didn't have the right background or connections to succeed. I made it my mission to provide them with the support and encouragement that I had been denied early in my career. The foundation funded dozens of startups, provided mentorship programs, and created networking opportunities that connected young entrepreneurs with experienced investors and business leaders. 3 years after MoneyMind's IPO, I received a letter that brought the entire journey full circle. It was from Derek Brooks, who had been working as a consultant after leaving Pinnacle. Dear Isabella, the letter began. I wanted to reach out to congratulate you on MoneyMind's continued success and to share some thoughts that have been weighing on my mind since our last meeting. Over the past few years, I've had the opportunity to reflect on my career and the decisions that led to my downfall at Pinnacle. I've come to understand that my treatment of you was not just professionally inappropriate, but morally wrong. I allowed my insecurities and prejudices to cloud my judgment. And in doing so, I missed an opportunity to be part of something truly revolutionary. I've been following MoneyMind's impact on financial literacy and entrepreneurship, and I'm genuinely impressed by what you've accomplished. More importantly, I'm inspired by the way you've used your success to create opportunities for others. The MoneyMind Foundation's work is exactly the kind of leadership our industry needs. I wanted you to know that I've been volunteering with a nonprofit organization that provides business mentorship to young entrepreneurs. It's my small way of trying to make up for the opportunities I failed to recognize and support during my corporate career. Every time I work with a young founder, I think about the day you presented MoneyMind to our executive team. And I'm reminded of the importance of keeping an open mind and supporting innovation regardless of where it comes from. I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking for anything in return. I simply wanted you to know that your success has taught me valuable lessons about leadership, humility, and the importance of believing in people's potential rather than limiting it. Thank you for showing me what real leadership looks like. The world is better because you refuse to let my dismissal define your possibilities. With sincere respect and admiration. Derek Brooks. I read the letter twice, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. There was satisfaction in knowing that Derek had finally understood the impact of his actions. But there was also a sense of sadness for the opportunities that had been lost due to his closed-mindedness. I decided to respond, not because I owed Derek anything, but because I believed in the power of redemption and second chances. Dear Derek, I wrote, thank you for your letter and for sharing your reflections on our shared history. I appreciate your honesty and your commitment to supporting the next generation of entrepreneurs. I'm glad to hear that you're using your experience to mentor young founders. That kind of support can make an enormous difference in someone's life, as I learned from the investors and mentors who believed in MoneyMind when others didn't. I hope that your work with emerging entrepreneurs will help prevent other talented individuals from experiencing the kind of dismissal that I faced. The business world needs more people who are willing to recognize potential and nurture innovation, regardless of traditional expectations or preconceptions. I wish you success in your consulting work and your volunteer efforts. Perhaps our paths will cross again in the future under more positive circumstances. Best regards, Isabella Morgan. I never heard from Derek again, but I occasionally saw his name mentioned in articles about startup mentorship programs. It seemed that he had found a way to channel his experience into something positive, and I was glad for that. As for MoneyMind, the company continued to thrive and evolve. We went through several more funding rounds, expanded into dozens of new markets, and developed partnerships with major financial institutions around the world. The platform now serves over 50 million users and generates more than $2 billion in annual revenue. But the numbers, impressive as they are, don't tell the full story. The real measure of MoneyMind's success is the impact we've had on people's lives. We've helped millions of users pay off debt, start investing, and build financial security. We've provided tools and resources that have made financial literacy accessible to people who were previously excluded from traditional investment opportunities. The company's culture reflects the values that drove me to start MoneyMind in the first place: innovation, inclusivity, and a genuine commitment to solving real problems. We've created an environment where good ideas are celebrated regardless of their source, and where every team member is encouraged to challenge conventional thinking. Our hiring practices prioritize diversity and inclusion, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because diverse perspectives lead to better solutions. We actively recruit from underrepresented communities, partner with historically Black colleges and universities, and provide internship opportunities for students who might not otherwise have access to the tech industry. The MoneyMind office space reflects our values as well. Instead of the intimidating corporate boardrooms that had once made me feel small and unwelcome, we've created collaborative spaces that encourage open dialogue and creative thinking. Our conference rooms are named after pioneering entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, and our walls display quotes about innovation, perseverance, and the power of believing in yourself. Looking back on my journey from that humiliating conference room to building a billion-dollar company, I'm struck by how much the experience shaped not just my business success, but my understanding of leadership and responsibility. Derek's dismissal could have broken me, but instead it became the foundation for something far greater than I had ever imagined. The hobby project that he had mocked with such condescension had indeed become a billion-dollar business. But more importantly, it had become a force for positive change in the world. MoneyMind had democratized access to financial education and investment opportunities, helping millions of people take control of their financial futures. The lemonade stand comment that had once stung so deeply had inspired a comprehensive financial literacy program that was now reaching children across the country. The cutesy app that he had dismissed as frivolous had evolved into a sophisticated platform that was setting new standards for user experience and technological innovation in the financial services industry. But perhaps the most satisfying aspect of my success was the way it had created opportunities for others who had been underestimated or dismissed. Through MoneyMind Ventures, our investment arm, we had funded dozens of startups founded by women, minorities, and other entrepreneurs who had struggled to access traditional funding sources. Many of these companies had gone on to achieve remarkable success, creating jobs, solving important problems, and inspiring the next generation of innovators. Every time I met with a young entrepreneur who reminded me of myself, passionate, determined, and full of ideas that could change the world, I was reminded of the importance of the work we were doing. The business world needed more people who were willing to see potential where others saw only problems, and who were committed to creating opportunities rather than barriers. As MoneyMind approached its 5th anniversary, I decided to commemorate the milestone by returning to my old neighborhood and visiting the coffee shop where I had first met the 2 women whose conversation had inspired my breakthrough marketing strategy. The shop was still there, bustling with the same energy and serving the same excellent coffee that had fueled so many of my early planning sessions. I ordered a latte and sat at the same table where I had once worked on user interface designs while surviving on ramen noodles and dreams. The contrast between that struggling entrepreneur and the successful CEO I'd become was almost surreal. But I tried to remember the lessons that journey had taught me. Success, I had learned, wasn't just about achieving your goals. It was about using your achievements to create positive change in the world. The revenge I had sought against Derek had ultimately been less important than the impact MoneyMind had on its users and the opportunities it had created for other entrepreneurs. As I sat in that coffee shop, reflecting on the journey that had brought me there, I received a notification on my phone. It was a message from Amy Chen, the young woman I'd met at the IPO ceremony 3 years earlier. Ms. Morgan, the message read, I wanted to share some exciting news with you. My sustainable energy app, EcoCharge, just received Series A funding from GreenTech Ventures. We're officially launching next month. And I wanted to thank you for the encouragement and support you provided when I was just a scared college student with an idea. Your story taught me that the word no doesn't mean an idea is wrong. It just means you need to find the right people to say yes. I faced a lot of skepticism and rejection during my fundraising process, but I remembered your advice about believing in my vision and fighting for it. EcoCharge is now positioned to help millions of people reduce their carbon footprint while saving money on energy costs. I hope that someday I can pay forward the kindness and support you showed me. Thank you for proving that passion projects can change the world. I smiled as I read Amy's message, feeling a sense of pride and fulfillment that exceeded any financial milestone or business achievement. This was the real legacy of MoneyMind, not just the billions of dollars in revenue or the millions of users, but the ripple effect of inspiration and opportunity that had spread far beyond our original vision. The young woman who had once been dismissed as someone who should start with a lemonade stand had indeed started something significant. But it wasn't a lemonade stand. It was a movement that was changing the way people thought about money, innovation, and the power of believing in yourself despite the doubts of others. As I finished my latte and prepared to leave the coffee shop, I thought about the speech I would give at MoneyMind's 5th anniversary celebration the following week. I wanted to share the lessons I had learned about resilience, innovation, and the importance of supporting others who dared to dream big. But most importantly, I wanted to remind everyone that success wasn't just about proving your critics wrong, it was about proving yourself right. Derek's dismissal had been painful, but it had also been a gift. It had forced me to find the strength and determination within myself to pursue my vision regardless of external validation. The real victory wasn't that Derek had been wrong about MoneyMind's potential. It was that I had been right to believe in it. And that belief, that unwavering faith in the power of innovation and the importance of solving real problems, had been the foundation of everything that followed. As I walked back to my car, I felt grateful for the journey that had brought me to this moment. The humiliation in that conference room had been transformed into motivation, the mockery into determination, and the dismissal into an unshakable belief in the power of perseverance. Derek had called MoneyMind a hobby project and suggested I start with a lemonade stand. He had been wrong about the first part, but in a way, he had been right about the second. I had started with something small and simple, a belief in my own vision and the determination to make it real. And from that small beginning, I had built something extraordinary. Not just a billion-dollar business, but a company that was making a real difference in the world. The girl who had once been told to focus on her actual job had created thousands of jobs for others. The woman who had been dismissed as someone who didn't understand serious money had built a platform that was helping millions of people take control of their financial futures. The revenge was complete, but it had evolved into something far more meaningful than I had ever imagined. It wasn't about destroying Derek or proving him wrong. It was about proving that innovation and determination could overcome any obstacle, and that the most powerful response to dismissal was success. As I drove back to my office, I thought about the young entrepreneurs who would walk through MoneyMind's doors tomorrow, full of ideas and dreams that might seem impossible to others. I thought about the users who would open our app and take another step toward financial security and independence. I thought about the children who would learn about entrepreneurship through our Lemonade Stand Economics program. All of these people were part of the story that had begun with a hobby project in a cramped studio apartment. They were the real measure of MoneyMind's success, and the reason why Derek's dismissal had ultimately been transformed into something positive and transformative. The conference room where I had once been humiliated was now just a memory. But the lessons I had learned there would stay with me forever. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the greatest challenges, and sometimes the people who doubt you the most end up providing the motivation you need to achieve your dreams. Derek had mocked my passion project, but that passion project had become a billion-dollar business. More importantly, it had become a force for positive change in the world, creating opportunities for others and demonstrating the power of believing in yourself even when others don't. The revenge was complete, but the story was far from over. MoneyMind continued to grow and evolve, touching more lives and creating more opportunities every day. And somewhere out there, in coffee shops and college dorms and corporate conference rooms, other young entrepreneurs were facing their own moments of dismissal and doubt. I hoped that some of them would remember the story of the hobby project that became a $1 billion business, and that they would find the strength to persevere despite the skeptics and critics. Because that's what real revenge looks like, not the destruction of your enemies, but the creation of something so meaningful and impactful that their dismissal becomes irrelevant. The champagne glass that had shattered against my office floor that day had been swept away long ago, but the moment it represented, the moment when I realized that my victory was complete, remained crystal clear in my memory. Derek had tried to break my spirit, but instead he had forged it into something unbreakable. And that, perhaps, was the greatest lesson of all.